Welcome everybody to downtown Los Angeles, a city that didn't just grow upward, but also grew underground. 100 years ago, this part of the city was packed with bars, hotels, theaters, and backroom joints. And then in the 1920s, the government outlawed alcohol. Prohibition was supposed to shut the party down in places like this. Instead, downtown LA just adapted. The city kept drinking, just more on the down low. And over time, an urban legend started to spread. An urban legend about basements that connected, about underground passageways, about booze being moved around the city out of sight beneath the streets, hidden from police raids and crackdowns. According to these legends, downtown LA was threaded together by secret tunnels used to smuggle illegal alcohol between a network of speakeasies while Prohibition was in full effect. Now, to be clear, most of this lives in the realm of urban legend. There's no map, no officially documented master tunnel system, and a lot of the stories get more dramatic every time they're told. But there were underground spaces, and some of them still exist. So today, I'm here in downtown, digging into the history as I go. Starting with one of the only tunnel systems you can actually walk through today, and does in fact exist. The underground tunnels beneath the Los Angeles Hall of Records. From there, we'll see how much of the Prohibition tunnel story holds up, and how much of what we're hearing is history versus Los Angeles being really, really good at turning stories into myths. All these old theaters are kind of a shell of what they used to be. I mean, this whole strip is. At one point, this area was a glamorous spot to go out and see shows, drink, have fun, and now it's a little bit run down, but you still see these pretty interesting old buildings here, and this is the historical core, so a lot of these buildings go way back. This area is, or this restaurant's called Clifton's. It's one of the oldest restaurants in downtown LA. I think LA, for that matter. But this place has been around since, I guess, 1932. I thought it was older than that, but yeah, I think originally it started out as a cafeteria. And now, last time I was there, it's been turned into a bar. But it was closed down for a little bit, and I think it's since been reopened. Another fact, there's a neon light in the basement that's, I believe, the oldest continuous light in the city that's been on for like over 100 years or something. You can see there's just old theaters everywhere. Here's the Los Angeles Theater right here, which is a pretty famous old theater. And then there's the Palace right over here. I can imagine this area was a really glamorous destination back in the day. These streets were probably lined with people dressed to impress, you know, out for a night on the town, see some shows, drink some booze, especially during Prohibition. And it was a really nice area to hang out in, very much a destination. These buildings are still here. This area has kind of lost its charm over the years. There's no longer the extent of shows that used to be here. I mean, there's shows now that still go on in these theaters, but it's mostly made up of storefronts now, jewelry stores. Here's a Skechers where there used to be an old theater. So this whole strip has very much changed since its glory years back in the 1930s, 40s, before it kind of had its downfall. This building's for sale, fixer-upper, but those are some pretty cool loft spaces up there. Wow, just look at the detail on some of these buildings. It's amazing the craftsmanship that went into them. It's so detail-oriented. This is the Broadway Arcade building, and it's just amazing. Look at this facade here. They definitely don't build them like they used to. Now, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing there could be potentially some underground tunnels leading to some of these theaters down here, because that was a big area where some underground bars used to be. This whole area was a destination to get illegal booze during Prohibition. So I can imagine that there's some tunnels underground here that have probably been sealed off and that are impossible to get to now, down below our feet here. I will also note that we are right on the border of Skid Row. So this area has a lot of transients here, and it's a bit run down right now. It has been run down for a while now. But almost 100 years ago, this was the spot to be, to go out and party and see some shows and drink some booze and have a good time. Yeah, it does. It does have that feel. Yeah, you too. The guy said it reminds him of New York. This area reminds him of New York City, which I could see. A lot of these old buildings here. I mean, this is a unique spot in Los Angeles because LA, as most people know, is spread out and doesn't have a lot of skyscrapers and tall buildings. But this area is very much a urban spot where you see a lot of these old 1930s style buildings, 1920s style buildings that have been here for a long time. It does have a very old-timey feel. You see lots of buildings for lease here, a lot of boarded up storefronts. I'm not sure exactly why this area has been hit so hard recently, but it seems like a lot of places have been closing up shop, a lot of businesses have been closing up shop. I don't know the exact reason why this is, but it's kind of sad because this area could be a really special destination to visit. It has a lot of character. Unfortunately, it's fallen on hard times, not just recently, it's been like this for a while, but for whatever reason, this area just never seems to pick itself up. Although I think this area has kind of had a resurgence of people moving down here and fixing up some of these loft spaces, it's definitely still not the place it used to be close to 100 years ago. It still has a long ways to go. Still very rough around the edges. We just walked through the Grand Central Market, which has been there since around 1917. I don't know too much about the history of the market, but it's a good spot to grab a bite to eat. Yeah, other than that, it's kind of a interesting old market down here to visit if you're here. So we're walking up the street now to the Hall and Records building, which is where these tunnels are that you can go into under City Hall and some of the courthouses there. And last time I was here, maybe 5 years ago, you could go inside them and walk around. I don't think you were really supposed to, but you could do it. And we're gonna go see if we can do it now. So I'm not 100% sure you can still go in there, because I wouldn't be surprised if they closed it off. But we're gonna try to go see if we can go explore it right now. So there you are, folks. Beautiful Los Angeles City Hall. Now, the reason why this area has significance to these tunnels is because a lot of people have theories that these tunnels that were used during Prohibition to move illegal booze throughout the city during a time when drinking alcohol was illegal, they think that, or they have theories that it was connected to the government buildings that were here at the time, more specifically the mayor's office, and that these tunnels that were transporting illegal booze were all connected to the mayor's office and city hall down here, and went out to the city to these illegal speakeasies, and this was the area that was supplying a lot of the booze that was traveling around the city at the time, the illegal booze. So it's an interesting story. I don't think there's any, I haven't found any historical evidence that suggests that government officials were at the time had a hand in running illegal booze operations and distributing booze during Prohibition, but I wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't be the first politician who has capitalized on selling booze during Prohibition. But there are tunnels directly under here, which we're gonna go explore right now. The tunnels were built at the tail end of Prohibition. Prohibition ran from 1920 to 1933, and they were built around 1930. So they were up and running towards the end of Prohibition, but according to what I just read, they were not specifically made for running booze or illegal activities, so they say. Supposedly they were just built for efficiency, moving things in between the various government buildings down here, records, in some cases prisoners. Supposedly Mickey Cohen, the infamous Los Angeles gangster during the era of Prohibition, was transported in these underground tunnels for his safety. So yeah, as the record states, they were built for efficiency and to move things in between these various government buildings down here, and not intended to move booze, which was illegal during this era. But who really knows? I mean, of course, no government official is ever going to come out and say that these tunnels were intended to move booze during this era of Prohibition, but who knows? So we're going to take the elevator down into the Hall and Records building. I don't know if you're really supposed to do this, so I'm going to try to be low-key about this, but we're going to try to see if we can access these tunnels down here. Not sure if this is going to work. It's been quite some time since I've been here, probably been 5 years or so. Last time I was here, you could just walk into these tunnels and nobody said anything, but that was 5 years ago and a lot's changed since then, so there might be higher security now. I wouldn't be surprised.
Going down.
I'm not sure exactly where I'm going. I'm just going to go all the way to the bottom, and hopefully that takes me to the tunnels. We'll see.
Third floor.
Hi. You can't do recording in this building.
Oh, I can't? Okay. Sorry. So unfortunately that got shut down real quick, and there's a lot more security here at the Hall and Records tunnels than when I was here last time. But that's okay, because those tunnels are pretty well documented. There's a lot of photos and videos I can show from online. Like I said before, there's no real hard evidence linking these tunnels here to bootlegging during Prohibition. But standing here, it's easy to see how the legend formed. You had real underground passageways here beneath downtown LA. You had alcohol that was illegal, and you had a city government that wasn't fully interested in stopping people from drinking. Once those things exist at the same time, it's not hard to see how people started connecting the dots. The tunnels themselves weren't built for bootlegging. They were built for bureaucracy, for control, for moving people and paperwork out of sight, but their existence helped fuel a bigger myth. That downtown Los Angeles was stitched together underground in ways the public never really saw. And that's where the stories stop being about government buildings, because just a few blocks from here is a place that stayed open through Prohibition and has a real basement space that was used during this era as a speakeasy and became one of the most famous names tied to these underground stories. And that's where I'm headed to next. So here we are in front of the King Eddy Saloon, and this bar has been here since the early 1900s, which means it lived straight through Prohibition when officially alcohol was illegal. So the King Eddy did what a lot of places did at the time. It hid in plain sight. For years, it operated as a piano store, and somehow that raised 0 red flags. The bar survived, it even thrived. And according to local lore, its basement became part of the underground network people still talk about today because it's still here, frozen in time. Right now, the underground area is closed off to the public, as far as I know, but occasionally you can get a tour of what's left, which I did not too long ago. And when you go downstairs, you're not looking at a museum or exhibit. You see old brick-lined walls, murals printed on brick walls, and spaces that feel older than the bar itself. Now, of course, there's no paper trail proving booze was smuggled through tunnels from here. But when you combine a Prohibition-era bar like this one, a disguised storefront, and an underground basement that connects into the city's hidden spaces, you can see where the stories come from. These faded murals you see underground here, painted on doors and brick deep in King Eddy's basement, were largely forgotten until 2008 when they were uncovered after decades of dust and darkness. The basement here at King Eddy Saloon is pretty clear proof that underground speakeasies existed in Los Angeles during Prohibition. This wasn't theoretical, it wasn't just stories. You had real spaces below street level where drinking could happen out of sight, hidden from inspectors, raids, and anyone who didn't know where to look or was possibly paid to look the other way. But it's also important to say this. King Eddy isn't the only proof that a network of illegal speakeasies existed in the area. All over downtown LA, there were places quietly serving alcohol during Prohibition, often without tunnels, without anything dramatic. Just back rooms, hidden doors, and a lot of people looking the other way. A good example is Cole's French Dip. It had a back room that functioned as a speakeasy, and you can still see that setup today. So while the King Eddy basement feels especially underground and cinematic, it's really part of a much bigger picture. Los Angeles didn't stop drinking during Prohibition. It just got quieter about it. Whether that means basements, back rooms, hotels, or places hiding in plain sight like a piano store, or some of the theaters that we passed earlier. So after walking around and digging into some of the history here, I think a lot of the tunnel stories you hear about in downtown LA that describe miles of hidden passageways and massive bootlegging networks built to move booze around during the Prohibition. From what I've read, most of these underground spaces were already here before Prohibition ever started, or built at the tail end. Service tunnels, utility corridors, old transit routes, basements that just happened to line up next to each other. And if alcohol moved through some of these spaces during Prohibition, it probably wasn't because they were specifically designed for bootlegging. It was because bootleggers reused whatever already existed. Los Angeles definitely kept drinking during Prohibition, just like every other major city in the United States at the time. That part isn't myth, and underground spaces absolutely existed beneath downtown. But as far as I've read, historians haven't found solid proof of a mapped, citywide bootlegging tunnel system. No master plan, no documented network connecting speakeasies across LA. What does exist is something a little more interesting. Real infrastructure, mixed with secrecy, mixed with, I'm sure, a little corruption of the time, mixed with stories that got better every time they were told. Because by most accounts, if you dig into the history during this time, Los Angeles city officials didn't exactly enforce Prohibition everywhere. It managed it. Some mayors talked tough, but corruption inside City Hall and the LAPD meant illegal drinking was often tolerated, especially downtown. It's generally well known that whether or not individual mayors were taking bribes, the city was functionally corrupt during Prohibition because illegal alcohol thrived with official permission. And over 100 years later, those stories are still attached to these places, even when the physical evidence is incomplete. So the tunnels are real, the drinking was real, but the idea of a single, purposely built underground bootlegging network probably lives somewhere between history and folklore.